Namaste.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, Mr. Kulkarni.
Wonderful. So
Please.
we can begin whenever you want.
Yeah, we can begin right now.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Mr. Joe, can we begin?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Please.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Sun Weidong, Ni hao, Namaskar. It's an honor and a privilege for me to have this opportunity to have a dialogue with you. As you are aware, I have been a strong and consistent advocate of India-China relations, friendship and cooperation for close to 2 decades. Ever since my first visit to your great country in 2003, when I accompanied our former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee on his landmark visit, I have believed in the imperative need for good relations between our two great Asian nations. I often quote what Mahatma Gandhi had said way back in 1942, when neither of our two countries was free. He said, and I quote, "As a friend of China, I long for the day when a free India and a free China will cooperate together in friendship and brotherhood for their own good and for the good of Asia and the world," unquote. These words have lost none of their relevance, none of their meaning, even after nearly 8 decades. I'm a great and genuine admirer of China, Chinese people, Chinese culture and civilization, and China's spectacular achievements in many fields. One of China's greatest achievements is, in recent years, its success in complete eradication of poverty. This, I believe, has important lessons for India and many other developing countries. Let me add here that as an Indian, I'm also a great admirer of Chinese President Xi Jinping. His thoughts are highly important for the entire world, especially his call to build a community of shared future for humanity. I have read all the 3 volumes of Xi Jinping's speeches and writings, Governance of China. I'm deeply impressed. I send today my heartiest congratulations to the fraternal people of China on the occasion of the first centennial this year, 100 years of the founding of the Communist Party of China.
Thank you.
It's a world-changing event which we all deeply appreciate. Ambassador Sun, I do hope that through this conversation, you will shed light on some important issues and questions that have cropped up in India-China relations. I'm sure that our conversation will be sincere and candid, as it should be among friends, and will make a small but significant contribution, positive contribution to the broader India-China dialogue.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Kulkarni, my friend. I'm so glad to have this virtual dialogue with you today. And thank you for your kind words toward China, to President Xi Jinping, to the people of China, the Communist Party of China, and for your close following of China's development over the years, and also your personal efforts in firmly supporting and promoting China-India friendship. I'm deeply touched, to be frank, by your words of admiration for President Xi Jinping. Yes, President Xi is the trailblazer for the socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. He is the navigator in the course of realizing the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation. And he is a great leader supported by the whole party and loved by the people. The Communist Party of China will celebrate its centenary this year, as you said, and I heartily thank you, Mr. Kulkarni, for your heartfelt congratulations on this historic occasion. And I may say that under the leadership of the party, China has been marching forward in the past 100 years in this historic course of standing up, growing rich, and now becoming strong. The CPC was born for the people. It achieves success because of people's support and always works hard for people's interests. For example, last year, the CPC led the Chinese people in making major strategic achievements in fighting against COVID-19. And another example is not long ago, President Xi Jinping declared a complete victory in the battle against absolute poverty in China. So that means the absolute poverty that lasted for thousands of years in China has been eliminated. The CPC's people-centered philosophy of governance are fully demonstrated in these two great achievements. And President Xi has emphasized that people must always be put above everything else. And we must regard people's opinion and feelings as our own. So the past 100 years represents a history of the party breathing the same breath as the people, share the same future with the people, and staying truly connected with the people. And I'm so pleased to learn that you have read all the 3 volumes of Xi Jinping, The Governance of China. Well, this set of books are extensive and profound. They covered China's politics, economy, society, culture, ecology, and the governance of the party, the state, and the military, and many other topics. So these books comprehensively and systematically reflect the rich connotation of Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. They serve as the gateway of thought for the international community to understand China's development philosophy, its path, and its domestic and foreign policies. And I believe that have you read this, you have read these books, you have a more accurate and profound and thorough understanding of China. And I also hope that more and more Indian friends will read these books and get an in-depth understanding of the current China. So I hope that with these words, we can start today's dialogue. And yes, together we can make our own little contribution to the great course of China-India relationship. Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni.
Thank you, Ambassador, for these very warm and illuminating opening remarks, which set the tone for our dialogue. So let me begin with my first question. India and China, our two great Asian nations, have enjoyed friendly ties for thousands of years. And the two countries have many similarities in terms of population, development, and civilization. However, all of us know that the year 2020 was a difficult year for India-China relations. Many people are apprehensive about the future trajectory of our ties. How do you see the characteristics and prospects of India-China relations? How can this year, 2021, become a better year? What should India do? What should China do? Your candid answer will greatly help in changing the public perception in India about China.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Kulkarni, well, I think to fully understand China-India relations, we need to start with the basic characteristics of the two countries, which you mentioned just now. And I think there are at least three important similarities between us. These similarities are, first, China and India are the only two major developing countries in the world with a population of over 1 billion. So the problems we are facing cannot be found in the rest of the world. For example, over 1 billion people have to consume about 7 lakhs of tons of food each and every day to feed themselves. And you know, food is #1 need for the people. So food security is therefore a big issue for both China and India. Another example is employment. China aims to create 1.1 crore new urban jobs this year. That is 11 million new jobs in 1 year. And India also needs to furnish employment to tens of millions of young people every year. So these numbers, 1 million, 10 million or more, is equivalent to the entire population of a medium-sized country. China and India have huge economic size. However, when it divided by over 1 billion people, then our per capita GDP still lags far behind that of developed countries. As China and India are both at a crucial stage of development and revitalization, development is our top priority. That's what I see it. So when China and India were both developed, it would mean that 1/3 of the world population achieved development. And it will be our biggest contribution to the world. In this sense, the top agenda of our countries should focus on development and concentrate on doing our own business well. The second similarity is that China and India are both important emerging economies in the world. The world today is undergoing profound changes unseen in a century. The international landscape is also undergoing profound transformation. China is the only country in the world that has all the industrial categories listed in the United Nations Industrial Classification. It has the largest and fastest growing middle income population in the world, which is more than 400 million people. So we have huge production capacity and consumption potential. And look at India. India is rich in human resources and has robust market demand, with nearly 2/3 of its population under the age of 35. So from a long-term perspective, we can see that China and India are on an upward slope with dreams and aspirations for development and for rejuvenation. So we should jointly run in this marathon of development for good results. During this course, we should encourage each other, giving a helping hand to each other when we encounter obstacles and challenges. We don't want to see, the least thing we want to see is that China and India are in a boxing ring to fight with each other and undercut each other. And that is not in the interest of either side. And the third similarity is that China and India are ancient civilizations living in Asia side by side for thousands of years. Our ancient cultures have gifted us with a long-term perspective and great wisdom in dealing with the problems. People of our two countries have enjoyed friendly exchanges for more than 2,000 years. And we will continue to live together for another long, long time to come. And we should view and handle our relationship from a perspective of several years, decades, or even centuries, not just several months. It's natural for neighboring countries to have some differences. But the key point is to manage differences through dialogues and consultation and find a peaceful solution. As to ancient civilizations, we should have a long-term view and more wisdom, treat the differences in a mature and rational manner, and find a right way to get along with each other. I remember Chinese State Council and Foreign Minister Wang Yi pointed out that China-India relationship is essentially about how the world's two largest developing countries get along and pursue development and rejuvenation together. So I think that this is right to the point. And as I see it, at present, yes, China-India relations are facing some difficulties. But as long as the three basic characteristics or similarities I mentioned just now remain unchanged, I think the essence of China-India relationship will not change. And this year, we have just celebrated the 71st anniversary of our diplomatic ties. The year in the Chinese lunar calendar is the year of ox. So it's an auspicious year for China and India both. And ox means hardworking and diligence. And you ask, how can we bring our bilateral relations back on the sound and stable track? Well, I think we need to achieve three commitments. First, we should commit to the consensus. Our two leaders reached important consensus that China and India are neither competitive rivals nor threats, but cooperation partners and development opportunities to each other. This is the political cornerstone for our bilateral relations that we must firmly adhere to and never waver. The second commitment, we should commit to dialogue. Both sides should treat each other with a calm, pragmatic, and constructive attitude with mutual respect. We should seek to eliminate misunderstandings, enhance mutual trust, build consensus, and manage differences through dialogues. We should respect each other's core interests and major concerns and refrain from interfering into each other's domestic affairs. And thirdly, we should commit to cooperation. Cooperation between China and India is mutually beneficial in nature. And cooperation in various fields can promote each other forward. So we can start from the easier issues to resume and enhance practical cooperation and friendly exchanges step by step. And that will help to accumulate conditions for further improvement of our bilateral relations. So these are the thoughts that I would like to share with you. And thank you, Mr. Kulkarni.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let me come to my second question, which in some ways is a continuation of the first. The unfortunate incidents at Galwan Valley in eastern Ladakh cast a long and dark shadow over our bilateral relations. That shadow has not yet disappeared fully, even though the beginning of the disengagement process in February is a welcome development. I have written in several of my articles in the media, both Indian media and Chinese media, that the time has come to ensure that there is no further military standoff in future along the LAC, such as the one that took place at Galwan Valley in June last year. This is also the view of all right-thinking people in India and China. The reason is simple. Every time such an incident happens, our bilateral relations get pushed back by several years. It is also well recognized that the best way of putting an end to such incidents is to reach a final settlement of the boundary dispute. Honorable Ambassador, do you think resolution of the boundary dispute should now be on top of the India-China agenda? I have a related question. Since 2003, the special representatives of the leaders of our two countries have had as many as 22 rounds of talks on the boundary question. All the issues must have been discussed threadbare. Can we expect a positive movement in this regard? If so, do you think, as you have stated on many occasions in different contexts, that both India and China should move halfway towards a final settlement? This is my question.
Okay. Yes, well, I think the incident which occurred in the border areas last year was unfortunate. Neither China nor India would like to see it happen. And as China has repeatedly emphasized, the rights and wrongs of the incident are clear. So are the stakes involved. The foreign ministers and the defense ministers of our two countries have communicated on this issue on many occasions. And the two sides have held 10 rounds of Corps Commander level meetings and 7 meetings of the WMCC mechanism. And you can see, yes, there are smooth diplomatic and military channels of communication between us. And both sides are willing to resolve issues and de-escalate tensions through dialogue and consultation. The recent disengagement of the frontline troops of both sides in the Bangong Lake area is conducive to building mutual trust and further easing the situation on the ground. And against this backdrop, we should implement the consensus reached by the two leaders and strictly abide by the existing agreements and step up dialogue and communication and improve the border management and control mechanisms to further ease, stabilize, and control the border situation, avoid relapse, and jointly safeguard peace and tranquility in the border areas. The boundary question is a historical burden imposed on us by the Western colonists, and it is very sensitive and complex. Border disputes are reality to both of us. We need to attach adequate attention and take them seriously. And both China and India have the political will to solve the boundary question. The two sides have established the mechanism of special representatives meeting for the China-India boundary question in 2003. That is the year when Prime Minister Vajpayee paid his visit to China. And I was also lucky enough to receive his delegation in Beijing. So since then, we have 22 rounds of meetings and reached an agreement on the political parameters and guiding principles for the settlement of the India-China boundary question. And we are now working on the roadmap for negotiations on the settlement framework. I think China and India should actively push forward boundary talks and strive to reach a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable solution. And pending the final settlement, the two sides should jointly maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas. And I would like to say that China and India, we have a relation of multifaceted. It should be viewed in a comprehensive way rather than limited to one part. The boundary question is not the whole story of China-India relations and should be put at a proper place in the overall bilateral relations. And we should not allow differences to become disputes. The past experiences has repeatedly indicated that highlighting differences will not help solving problems, but erode the foundation of mutual trust. A sound bilateral relationship is conducive to enhancing mutual trust and creating favorable conditions and atmosphere for the settlement of the boundary question. And maintenance of peace and tranquility also need our joint efforts. The border disputes can only be resolved through dialogues and negotiations, as I said, and the two sides should strictly abide by the existing agreements and protocol and properly manage the border situation and refrain from taking any action that may jeopardize peace and tranquility in the border areas. And in case of an incident, then a timely communication through military and diplomatic channels should be undertaken to avoid any action that may complicate or escalate the situation. And we should strengthen our confidence building measures to maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas. The lessons of last year's border incident is profound, and such incident should not be repeated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Both sides have reiterated that differences should not be escalated to disputes. I think that is the wise thing to move forward and gives hope that we can indeed move forward. Let me now come to the next question. There is a huge and untapped scope for economic cooperation between India and China. Our trade, business, and investment cooperation suffered a setback in the year 2020. Around the same time, some countries in the West intensified the talk about decoupling and disengagement of economic relations with China. That dangerous talk and such dangerous efforts are still continuing. Ambassador, what are your thoughts on how India and China should expand and deepen their economic cooperation? You are well aware of India's legitimate concerns in this matter. How will China address these legitimate concerns? And what, in your opinion, should India do? I have a related point to make here. Since last year, our Honorable Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, has been emphasizing the need for India to become Atmanirbhar. Atmanirbhar means self-reliant in critical areas of the economy. In its own way, China is also pursuing the path of self-reliance and giving primacy to further developing its domestic economy through its dual circulation strategy. I believe that the strategies of India and China are not mutually exclusive and opposed to each other. For example, both being huge markets and rapidly growing digital economies, we should cooperate, especially in high-tech areas. Such cooperation will make our two economies stronger and more self-reliant. The same is also true, Ambassador, about India-China cooperation in green and clean energy development, since our two countries are equally committed to cooperation in fighting the climate crisis. Can you shed some light on this important matter?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. Well, as you said, China is accelerating the building of a new development paradigm. And in this paradigm, we have the domestic circulation as the mainstay, but also domestic and international circulation reinforcing each other. And that is by no means a closed domestic circulation. It's a dual circulation, as you said. As China adapts to the new development stage, we will enhance our capacity for self-sustained development and achieve high-quality development. And meanwhile, China will promote further opening up to connect Chinese market with the international market. And we noted that, as you mentioned, the Indian government has unleashed the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Am I right?
Yes, yes, you're right. Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Yes, Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign to accelerate India's development and also emphasized that India will not separate itself from the global trends. So in my view, it's a personal view, that major economies like China and India with over 1 billion population are not likely to solve problem of survival and development relying on other countries' favor. We have to find development paths that suit ourselves on our own efforts. And this is what happened in China in the past few decades. And in the era of globalization right now, the interests of various countries are deeply integrated. We all have a stake in each other's future. And relying on oneself to develop does not mean close one's own door. And we need to stick to opening up and promoting cooperation and inclusive development. Despite the global pandemic last year, China's economy has shown remarkable resilience and vitality. And we serve as a stabilizer as well as an engine for the world economy. I will give you 3 examples. First, China took the lead to control the epidemic and achieved positive economic growth. China's GDP has exceeded 100 trillion RMB yuan, with its per capita GDP exceeded 10,000 US dollars. We can see the promising prospects for high quality economic development. The second example is that the third China International Import-Export, the CIIC, held last year, has attracted companies from 124 countries and regions and achieved a cumulative intended turnover of more than 72 billion US dollars. It demonstrates that China is firm, convicted to open its domestic market to the world. And thirdly is that ASEAN now has surpassed the EU to become China's largest trading partner. And our two-way trade has reached 684 billion US dollars. And among them, with one country, Vietnam, our bilateral trade is 192 billion US dollars. And both China and ASEAN are the beneficiaries in this win-win cooperation. So China will continue to improve its all-round business environment. The negative list of foreign investment has been further shortened, and the door to the outside world will only open even wider. As the world's second largest economy, China's development will present even greater opportunities to India and other countries in the world. So decoupling from China means closing the door to the opportunities. And I believe that wise governments and businesses will make the right choice. China has never deliberately pursued a trade plus with India. The current imbalance in China-India trade is mainly caused by the difference in the trade structure. According to China's statistics, despite of the impact of the pandemic last year, the bilateral trade reached 87.6 billion US dollars, and of which India's exports to China were 20.8 billion US dollars. And that is a year-on-year increase of 16%. And that shows that the Chinese market will always welcome marketable commodities. And the economies of China and India are highly complementary. China has been India's largest trading partner for consecutive years, and India is China's largest trading partner in South Asia. This is the result of the market functions and enterprises' choices. Whether it's be, say, complete decoupling or selective decoupling, it will not be realistic, and it will harm others without benefit oneself. So China and India should integrate into the process of globalization and strive to make the pie of cooperation even bigger. We need to ease trade imbalance in the course of opening up and mutually beneficial cooperation to achieve common development. And we hope that India will treat us all as equals in its opening up and refrain from, say, imposing restrictions on specific countries or regions and overstretching the concept of national security to exclude companies from specific countries. And we hope Indian authority will treat Chinese companies in accordance with the WTO principles of non-discrimination and fair market competition, and provide an open, transparent, and fair business environment. You mentioned about environmental protection. Yes, I think protecting the environment and tackling climate change are important for our future generations. It is such an important issue and challenge we are facing at this moment. President Xi Jinping has pointed out that lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets. And China is pursuing the vision of innovative, coordinated, green, and open development that is for everyone. And we are striving to promote ecological civilization. And we will adopt more vigorous policies and measures to have CO2 emissions peak before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. China and India are all members of the BASIC countries with similar positions on climate change. So we have a good foundation for cooperation in this regard. India has an advanced service sector which developed rapidly. And the service sector has relatively low carbon emissions. And in China, we have advanced technologies in the areas like new energy vehicles, smart grids, energy conservation, and emission reduction. So I think we can further strengthen our mutual learning and also work together to tackle this climate change challenge and complement each other in various fields. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sun. I think you really put it very well that when we expand the pie of cooperation, it is good for both India and for China and also for many other countries in the world. Ambassador, the COVID-19 pandemic has proved to be the worst public health crisis, also an economic crisis the world has faced in modern times. How can India and China cooperate in fighting these crises, the public health crisis, the economic crisis, especially by joining hands in what I may say vaccine cooperation and not competition?
Yeah, well, this is an important question, actually. And Mr. Kulkarni, as you said in the beginning of this dialogue, we are building a community with a shared future. And the global fight against the COVID-19 pandemic has proved that humanity is really a community with a shared future. And we are all in the same boat. It is only through mutual help, unity, and cooperation can humankind overcome this crisis. And the human society today is faced with many global challenges, and there must be global action, global response, and global cooperation. Talking about China's policy on the COVID vaccines, well, China is a firm believer in making COVID vaccines a public good. China was among the first to pledge that its vaccines would be made a global public good. And China has worked in real earnest to improve vaccine accessibility and affordability in developing countries. The safety and effectiveness of the Chinese vaccine are earning widespread recognition across the world. And China is ready to discuss with other countries the feasibility and the protocols for mutual recognition of vaccination. We hope that Chinese vaccines will inject more confidence and hope into the global fight against the virus. And no matter by which country the vaccine is produced, it is a good vaccine so long as it is safe and effective. And we can see it now in India that you are also promoting vaccination across the country. And we do hope that India will make further progress and also achieve to bring this COVID-19 under control at an early time. And we also oppose any kind of vaccine nationalism and vaccine divide, or any attempt to politicize the vaccine cooperation. And China will continue to support the work of the World Health Organization and its key role in the fight against the pandemic. We will continue to push forward, building a global community of health for all, and strive for an early victory over the coronavirus across the world. I think on this issue, China and India will keep close communication with each other. Thank you.
Ambassador, it's very heartening to hear that China regards the COVID vaccine as a global public good, which should be available and made available and accessible, affordable to all the people around the world. because it's truly a global humanitarian crisis which calls for the widest possible global cooperation. Thank you very much. My next question is somewhat uh, sensitive. We all are well aware that the Indian media has been putting a lot of focus on quadrilateral, and it does so in ways that create a negative impression about China. Recently, Quad leaders also had their first virtual meeting. Since China and many other Asian countries are also maritime stakeholders in the region, would China be willing to cooperate with Quad members in establishing a rules-based order to ensure free and peaceful navigation for one and all? In other words, from what China has called selective multilateralism, is there a possibility for India and China to create genuine multilateralism in the Indo-Pacific with the participation of all other stakeholders? If we do so, I strongly believe that we can remove a major irritant in India-China relations.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni, for raising this question. And well, as I said, that the pandemic is accelerating the profound changes in a global landscape, and mankind is now facing multiple crises. As we name some of them: economic recession, climate change, regional hotspots, and other challenges. They are all closely linked with each other. And also hegemonism, unilateralism, and protectionism are prevailing. So the right way to solve these challenges and problems is to strengthen the solidarity and cooperation of the international community, and to practice, as you said, the true multilateralism. And earlier this year, President Xi Jinping delivered a speech at the World Economic Forum. He called for lightening up humanity's way forward with multilateralism, and sent out a strong, a powerful message of building a community with a shared future for mankind. The true multilateralism means upholding the UN-centered international system and the international order based on international laws. It means openness and inclusiveness instead of closeness and exclusion. It means equal-footed consultation instead of supremacy over others. Building small circles in the name of multilateralism is in fact group politics. And multilateralism prioritizing one's own interests is still unilateral thinking. And this selective multilateralism is not the right choice as we see it. And China upholds peace, development, cooperation, and mutual benefit. Our foreign policy is to safeguard world peace and promote common development. And we unswervingly adhere to the path of peaceful development. Well, I can share with you, Mr. Kulkarni, that culturally, as you know, China does not have the gene of hegemony in our blood. Historically, China used to be the most powerful country in the world, but never invaded or plundered other countries. And since the founding of the People's Republic of China, we have followed an independent foreign policy of peace and promoted the establishment of a just and reasonable international order. And today, despite its fast growth and great achievements, China remains a developing country that is willing to help other developing countries to achieve common development. And we should not take it for granted that a large country will definitely bully others. This is not the truth. It will not happen in China. China hopes to manage its own affairs well and create a better life for its people. We have no interest in replacing others or dominating the world. Now we are in the 21st century, and the mankind should be much more progressive and smarter than in the previous centuries, and must not repeat the mistakes made in the history. So we should stand on the right side of the history. We should stand firmly against power politics, the law of jungle, zero-sum games, and Cold War mentality. And all the countries need to respect each other's social systems and development paths. They should respect each other's core interests and major concerns, and respect each other's legitimate rights to develop themselves. And all the countries should seek peaceful coexistence, equal-footed cooperation, and win-win results, and work together to build a new type of international relations. And China and India are major developing countries and emerging economies. So we share important and extensive common interests in international and regional affairs. We should stick to our independent foreign policy, strengthen policy coordination within the United Nations, the G20, the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and China, India, Russia cooperation, and other multilateral institutions. We should promote cooperation on pandemic prevention and control, poverty alleviation, energy security, climate change, environmental protection, and food safety, to name some of it, and jointly maintain regional stability and safeguard the common interests of the developing countries. China and India should work together to build a more just, democratic, and rational, multipolar international order. Let's come to work together. Thank you.
Ambassador, you said something really profound, that we should learn from history and not repeat the mistakes of the past. We all know how in the 19th and 20th centuries, major powers had a confrontational approach and the entire world suffered the two horrific wars. India and China, as two great civilizational nations, have a responsibility, I believe, to set a new example. And therefore, you have said that our firm commitment to peace is what will establish a new model and pave the way for a new world order.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I do believe so. And I think China and India will benefit from the ancient civilizations of the East,
Yes.
that we value harmony,
Yes.
we value peace, and we value, say, families. We value all these things to live peacefully together. And also, we believe that the whole world is one family, and it is a community for a shared future. So I think we have lots of common grounds on these issues.
You know, as our Prime Minister says often, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
This means
entire world is one family.
Yeah, this is exactly what I mentioned.
This is our ancient civilizational wisdom, and absolutely the same thought is also expressed by the
Yes.
Chinese civilization. So
Yes.
it is the wisdom of our two civilizations that can guide the entire world to a better future.
Exactly. We are living under the same dome.
Yes.
And we have nowhere else to go. So what can we do? We can live peacefully with each other and solve problems through dialogues and consultations, but not to seek for any kind of hegemony or domination of the world, or what I call it, the rule of jungle.
Yes.
In the jungle, of course, those bigger animals will eat the smaller ones. But in human society, it should not happen. It should not happen. We are human beings, and we are now in the 21st century. So we have to think about something new and not repeat the mistakes in the history, as I said.
You know, Ambassador, I was so happy that I participated in the conference on dialogue of Asian civilizations, which President Xi Jinping hosted in Beijing in 2019. And
Yes.
this was precisely the message that the conference presented to the entire world. Civilizational wisdom, the wisdom of all the civilizations of the world, India, China, and all of the civilizations. We should respect each other and draw upon that wisdom to pave the way for the future. That brings me to something similar. You have been insistently and persistently, Ambassador, emphasizing the need for expanding people-to-people contacts as a strong anchor for India-China friendship.
Yes.
You will agree that when influential people and organizations in India, especially those that have a negative view of China, establish contacts with China, this has a better chance of making a positive contribution to our bilateral relations. I find, let me say this to you, Ambassador, I find that the Chinese society, including the educated public, has insufficient understanding about Hindu religion and Hindu culture and their contribution to Indian civilization. Therefore, there is a need for an ambitious program aimed at making the Chinese people gain a better understanding about Hinduism, Hindu culture, Hindu philosophy. What do you think the two countries should do to promote people-to-people contacts, especially with this perspective?
Oh, well, Mr. Kulkarni, I think, yes, you mentioned about a very important international conference hosted by China, and President Xi Jinping delivered a very important speech on the civilization, the mutual learning of civilization. Yes, as I see it, the world is colorful because of different civilizations. It's just like a big garden that you cannot imagine there's only one flower in this garden, but there are so many flowers in this garden that can make it colorful and beautiful. And that is the same thing happen with the different civilizations. There are different flowers in this big garden of the planet. And different countries, name it big or small, they are all making their own contributions to make this garden more colorful. We cannot imagine that there's only one civilization in this world. And in my opinion, that China and India and many other civilizations, they should learn from each other. And then they can benefit from this mutual learning. China and India are the world's two largest treasure houses of civilization, which lasted for thousands of years. So in the ancient times, we have many examples like Faxian, like Xuanzang, like Dhamma Ratna and Bodhidharma, all these famous names. They have introduced Buddhism to China. And we considered that they have built up the bridge of culture and people-to-people exchange between our two great civilizations. And this is a great contribution also to the global civilizations. And now in the modern times, we have academic masters, such as you may know Mr. Ji Xianling, and also Chandra Bakji. They devoted their whole life to explore and present the Chinese and Indian cultures to our peoples and the world. We need more Ji Xianling and more, say, Chandra Bakji nowadays to bring our two big cultures and the civilizations even closer in the modern times. But however, we know that the foundation of personal exchanges between our two countries is still weak. Before the pandemic, there are only about 1 million mutual visits between China and India each year. And I think this is totally incommensurate with the size of our two countries. Yeah, I think some Chinese people may have not enough, knowledge about India's culture, its religion, and even its people. And I think perhaps the same happened in India. And lack of close communication and contact between us leads to some misunderstandings and misinterpretation. Therefore, people-to-people exchanges between our two countries are indispensable. And we have huge potential in this regard. And I think we can start from the following areas to have a better understanding with each other. First, we should attach importance to the language education. Well, language serves as a bridge for cultural exchanges. And we in China actively support Hindi education. And in the beginning of this century, the Peking University was the only university with a Hindi course. But now, let me tell you that there are 18 universities in China. They have Hindi courses. And on the other hand, the Chinese language is the most spoken language in the world. And with the rapid growth of China, learning Chinese can be better embrace opportunities and the future. So we are ready to work with the Indian side to promote Chinese language education and encourage the Indian people to learn Chinese for better understanding of China. The second proposal is that we can step up local exchanges. Right now, there are 14 sister provinces and cities between China and India. And during the second informal summit in Mahabalipuram, the two leaders of our countries agreed to establish sister provinces and sister city relations between Fujian province and Tamil Nadu, and between Quanzhou city and Chennai. And we hope the two sides could implement the consensus as early as possible to further unleash the potential of bilateral local exchanges and cooperation. And thirdly is that we need to support youth exchanges. China and India have the largest population of youth in the world. And they are the mainstay of China-India friendship. During the pandemic, our young people actively hold online sessions and forums on anti-pandemic experience and business cooperation. There are very touching moments when our young people from two countries are encouraging each other to fight against this pandemic. And we can have more online seminars and roundtables and encourage our young people to share their photos, their words, and their vlogs about their experiences in China and India on the social media platforms. This is a popular way among the Z generations. And in addition, we are also willing to communicate with all the Indian political parties to share our experiences and enhance our mutual understanding. So I think maybe the sky is the limit for people-to-people exchange and cultural learning. And Mr. Kulkarni, you have been committed to promoting cultural and people-to-people exchanges between our two great nations for such a long time. I really appreciate your efforts, and I hope that you can inspire more Indian friends to have an objective view towards China through your personal experiences, and maybe in the future after the pandemic, through their own trips to China. Thank you.
You know, what you said, Ambassador, it reminded me of an enormous contribution that Professor Ji Xianlin, whom you mentioned, has made to scholarly understanding between our two countries. Not many people in India know that Professor Ji Xianlin translated the Ramayana epic in Chinese and many other Hindu texts. By popularizing such work, we can indeed bring the two countries, the scholars, the best minds of our two countries closer. And that's the, as you rightly said, the sky is the limit. We have enormous potential and also enormous need to expand and deepen people-to-people contacts, especially amongst the best minds of the two countries, so that their thoughts will live for centuries. We still remember Ji Xianlin. We still remember all the great adventurers and explorers who traveled across the length and breadth of this subcontinent and China. So we should follow their footsteps.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. This has been a very fruitful dialogue. Permit me, at the conclusion of this conversation, to make an important point from my side.
Yeah, please.
I must bring to the attention of listeners of this dialogue some wise thoughts that President Xi Jinping had presented in his profound speech when he visited India for the first time as president in September 2014. He delivered the speech at the Indian Council of World Affairs in New Delhi. Paying glowing tribute to India and Indian civilization, President Xi Jinping said, and I quote, "I have read a lot about colonial history of India when the Indian people fought arduously for national independence and when Mahatma Gandhi lived and conceived his ideas. By so doing, I was hoping to get insights into the evolution and character making of this great nation. I have read Rabindranath Tagore's poetry, such as Gitanjali, Stray Bird, Gardener, and Crescent Moon, many lines of which remain fresh in my mind. Tagore wrote, 'We come nearest to the great when we are great in humility. We come nearest to the great when we are great in humility.' In another poem, Tagore wrote, 'Let life be beautiful like summer flowers and death like autumn leaves.' Such beautiful and philosophical lines have inspired me deeply in my outlook on life, unquote.
Mm.
These are President Xi Jinping's words about India.
Mm.
Let me confess that I'm deeply moved every time I read this speech by President Xi Jinping.
Thank you.
The best way to conclude our conversation, Ambassador, would be to remind ourselves of what President Xi Jinping said, and I quote, China and India have a combined population of over 2.5 billion. If we speak with one voice, the whole world will listen. If we speak with one voice, the whole world will listen. And if we join hands, the whole world will pay attention. Unquote. Thank you. Dhanyawad. Xie.
Dhanyawad, Mr. Kulkarni. Well, you have just quoted the important and I must say also touching remarks delivered by President Xi Jinping. And that demonstrates the great importance he attaches to the China-India relations. And the precious spiritual legacy left over by Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore still inspires us today. I still remember when Rabindranath Tagore was completing his journey to China, and he said that I left my heart in China. So you can see that this close bond between our two great nations in history is really something that we need to carry on in the new century. And that is why we always say that the significance of China-India relations goes far beyond the bilateral scope. It has a global meaning, and it has a historical meaning. And it is a long and arduous task for us to promote the development of China-India relations as our leaders have guided us. And we need to make unremitting efforts and meet each other halfway during this process. And let me also make 3 highlight points as follows. First, we need to stick to the strategic consensus reached by President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. As I said in the beginning of our dialogue, China and India are partners rather than rivals, and the development opportunities rather than threats to each other. This is the basic judgment, a political cornerstone, and a strategic guidance for China-India relations. We should abide by these basic judgments, and we should transmit the important consensus to all the levels and put it into action. Second, we need to view the bilateral relations from an overall long-term and strategic perspective. China-India relations are not one-fold or flat, but multifaceted and multi-dimensional. Our common interests far outweigh differences. So we should view the China-India relations as a whole and must not keep our eyes only on one aspect of it. This is the relationship which is not confined to any specific incident or a short period of time. This is not the way we should do. Let us think from the past, the present, and the future. And we cannot just focus on the current differences and turn our back to the fundamental and long-term interests of our two countries, so that we can have a comprehensive and accurate understanding of the relationship. And thirdly, we need to push the bilateral relationship ahead. We should always be forward-looking and firmly follow the right path of mutual trust and cooperation, and not go astray with suspicion and distrust, nor fall back on the road of negative retrogression. And we need to follow the trend of the history and stick to the general direction of the two major neighboring emerging economies, forging ahead side by side to jointly achieving development. And I strongly believe this is what all the peace-loving and development-seeking countries and people in the world hope to see. And I hope to meet you and Indian friends offline after the pandemic. We had a very good dialogue today, but I mean, the time is limited, so we look forward to have another good talk about China-India friendship and also our mutual beneficial cooperation in the future. And let's work hand in hand together for a sound and stable development of China-India relations. Thank you, Dhanyavad, and 谢谢.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador. It was a great conversation.
Yes, we must continue such a dialogue.
Yes.
And I look forward to see you again and wish you all the best, a very good health, and all the success in the future.
Same to you, Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
It went off well, but it was good.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Kulkarni.
Yes.
Wow. And wonderful moment.
Yeah. Yes. And it all came from the heart.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that is what matters.
Yes. Yes. I can feel that. I can feel that. Yeah. So wish you all the best and hope
Thank
that
you. Yes.
Meet you in Delhi.
All the very best to you.
All the very best.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.